Thanks so much. Well, thanks, everybody. Hope I can get the conference off on a high note here. So my name's Bill Murphy. I run technology at the Blackstone Group, and prior to that, I started my career at Sapient Corporation, a consulting firm that you might have heard of. And then I was the founding CTO at Capital IQ, which is a product company for market data and financial technology. I was there for 11 years prior to coming to Blackstone 2 years ago. And for those of you who don't know Blackstone, we're the world's largest alternative asset manager. We manage over $230 billion across a distinct set of assets. Private equity, we buy large companies. Real estate is self-explanatory, hedge funds, and credit products. And the thing that really ties our type of investing together across all those different groups is that we don't just invest passively, where we buy an asset and wait for it to appreciate. We identify assets that we know that we can make better. So given my experience in consulting as a leader of a product organization and a software as a service company, leading the internal Blackstone technology efforts to power our professionals, and also being part of this ecosystem of companies that we're trying to make better every day, I wanted to talk. I feel like I have a unique vantage point to talk to everybody today about IT relevancy. So when I came to Blackstone, we changed the name of our group to Blackstone Innovations and Infrastructure. And I did that because IT, we all think it means information technology, and I'm sure we all take great pride in that because that's what we've been called all of our careers. However, I think, and this is maybe a little controversial, I think in the best case, it's viewed as adequate, a cost center, a back office function, and necessary. However, that's the best case. So I think in the worst case, unfortunately, it's viewed, and this might sting, and it stings to me, as defensive, late and overpriced, uninformed, unhelpful, the feeling that the technologists do their own thing and don't ask us what we need, and not just necessary, but unfortunately a necessary evil. So we're categorized by people who say no first and ask questions later. There's satire about the IT industry. If you watch some of the best SNL skits depicting a service desk technician, Google it if you want a couple laughs. And all of this makes our jobs harder because it's not just about the guy next to you who's behaving like that and you're doing the right thing. His or her negative perceptions by their business hurts us all. So we need to make it better, or else we're essentially swimming upstream against this negative perception. And I'm sure there are a lot of them in the audience today, the vendors are more than willing to tell you that they have the best thing since sliced bread, and they hold it as, when they're talking to the business users, they basically say it with a badge of honor, and you don't even have to involve IT. And I think that is just terrible, because we all know how that turns out, right? They buy something, they throw it on your door, you have to deal with it, it's never integrated right, and it basically creates this architecture in your organizations that is difficult to manage and way too costly. So I'm going to say, though, that it's not their fault, it's our fault. We need to change the brand so that people look to us for solutions instead of attempting to go around us. So I know you're probably saying, he said he was going to start out on a high note, right? So now let's start talking about the good stuff. Everybody also agrees that our job is very difficult, extremely complex, quickly changing, resource intensive, just, immensely challenging. And I know that when I speak to my users, they go, man, I wouldn't want to have your job most of the time, given all the different constituencies we need to manage. But what they all know, and this is the really exciting piece, is that it's also central to creating business change, new products, efficiencies in their current workflow, and really the future of the companies that we're all in today. Technology is really the only thing that can bend the cost curve significantly or create new products in most cases. So we're in a great position. The brand is broken, right? If Coca-Cola had a brand that was the brand of equivalent to IT today, they would just kill it and start again. All right, so we can't do that. It's just too hard to change everybody's perception immediately, right? So we all have to start focusing on the day-to-day, how do we make it better? And that's going to make everybody's job easier because it's going to create true partnership between all the business users and ourselves in order to get our work done more effectively. So to be a technology leader yesterday, you needed to be, I think you need to be three things. You needed to be a technologist, and we all know that. I'm sure most of you have engineering degrees like myself. We started off building technology, and we feel very close to that, so that's easy to understand. We also had to be risk managers, because everything about technology is risky. The security pieces of it, when should you release, how often should you release, how do you deal with change, how do you educate users, so on and so forth. And you have to constantly be managing those risks, and you've done that for years. You also need to be a process manager or a project manager, depending upon how you say it, but you need to manage how to get from A to Z in an effective way in order to build solutions for your users. So those were what you had to be yesterday. So what do you have to be today? You got to be all that stuff, unfortunately, and you've got to be a salesperson. It's not good enough. You're competing against every vendor in the world to try to bring your business knowledge and your innovative drive and help make solutions better. So you got to sell your solutions. You have to sell your knowledge so that people want to engage with you and with us. And then you need to be a relationship manager, because the sales job doesn't end the day you start down a road of an innovation. It needs to be maintained with your users throughout the time that you're implementing a given product or project. You also need to, a key part of generating buy-in for your users is speaking their language. So the days when you could ignore the financial spreadsheets and the return on investment of a product are gone. If you can't speak that language, you will quickly become a dinosaur in terms of how you're perceived. You'll be pigeonholed, you'll be put in the back, you'll be called the IT guy, and all the decisions will be made away from you. Now, you can't deliver any of these great innovations without a great team, and I'm sure everybody here has on their top 3 things that they're struggling with is how to build that team. I know I am. It's our biggest challenge is finding superstars. And so you got to be a great mentor and recruiter in order to bring in and keep the best talent that's going to enable your organizations to succeed. And then the last piece is creating the right place for a superstar group of people requires a culture, and as the leaders, you need to be the drivers and the creators of that culture. So now let's talk about, So really what I'm saying is forget about being a technology leader in the future. You have to be a true business leader. And I think that that's a mind shift that it's important for everyone here to make. And when people say we have to go check with the business, I want everybody to feel a little bit like cringe at that. That's how I feel whenever I hear that. It's like, no, we're all the businesses, right? We're all working together to push our organizations forward that much faster than they could go right now. So, what are the key traits to develop in order to essentially make this transition and be able to achieve more and be able to fix this brand of IT that we think is broken? First, humility. And I don't mean to say this, that you can't have pride in your work. You shouldn't defend your teams when they're under attack. You shouldn't feel proud of everything we have achieved and all the successes of the past. What I mean by humility is realizing that the day you launch a product, you should realize that's all that success is in the past, and it can be better than it is today. So get rid of any defensiveness around, wow, we just launched this yesterday, why do you want to change it? Because it's going to be constantly changing. Think about all the great product companies in the world. If Apple had stopped at the iPhone 1, we'd all be walking around with, probably with Samsungs. But you get the idea that they're constantly innovating and plowing thought and drive into realizing that what we did yesterday is not good enough. Secondly, curiosity. So don't pigeonhole yourselves, right? Don't pigeonhole ourselves. We have to learn everything we can about our businesses and about why we're doing something in order to be those true partners, right? Because we can't innovate and solution in the way that that's most effective without having that business knowledge, and that's going to take a ton of curiosity in order to get there. And that dovetails with business expertise. If you're not an expert in the business that you're trying to serve, I'd say you're not working hard enough. We have to get smarter collectively, and we'll deliver better solutions because of that. Energy is, unfortunately, the prerequisite sometimes, right? And I'm sure everybody here would love to be able to need a little less energy, but that's our cross to bear as an industry that's changing so fast. We need to give everything in order to get these skills and transfer them to true business value. Openness is one that I hold extremely dear in that I think it creates the culture that essentially allows all this to work. The minute that you say to somebody, well, I'm the CTO, so that's why we're doing it, instead of really explaining why we're doing it, is I think the day when your brand and everybody starts to believe you're that old type of IT that I described before. True openness around the why of every decision that is made inside and outside your organization will build that brand and will create that true partnership. And then the last is a commitment to excellence and constantly improving. We have to leave good enough behind as much as we possibly can and really try to delight our users. The consumerization of IT, where people are getting used to great solutions at home and bad solutions in the, and demanding those solutions in the enterprise to try to make the bad enterprise solutions better, is real. And unless we commit to excellence, we'll essentially become irrelevant over time. And then obviously constantly improving on that excellence, as we talked about with the humility piece. So that's going to help you build a culture of transparency, really building on that openness. Share as much as possible. Unless there's a confidentiality agreement or some other reason to not share it that's really strict, share it. Teamwork is easily understandable, but you can't do it alone. Third is entrepreneurship. And this, I define that as the ability to allow people to make mistakes. Because if you can't build a culture that allows everyone to try new things and innovate and fail occasionally, then you're not going to get the change and the positive improvements that you're looking for. And then the last one, excellence, really kind of builds on that entrepreneurship. While you have to allow the entrepreneurship to happen, you cannot allow mediocre products to come to market, mediocre solutions to get into the hands of your users. So you need the checks and balances so that when you take those chances and you seize those entrepreneurial opportunities, you also commit that they will be great, or you will kill them yourselves and move on to the next thing. So with that culture, I think we can build a true business partnership that can alleviate a lot of the brand problems. So now I want to talk about 4 things. I want to try to leave everybody with the 4 pillars that we feel at Blackstone and on my team are core to enabling this partnership to happen. And hopefully people can take this back and get some value from it. First is an open design process. And an open design process that's really driven by technology. I'm a big believer that product organizations and technology organizations should be together. Because it essentially rids organizations of political issues that are kind of natural if you don't have them feeling like one team. So funnel ideas to a prioritization point, and then create an easily digestible description of the problem. And this is really key. Focus on the problems. My favorite quote of all time is the Henry Ford quote that I'm sure everybody's heard. If I had asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. And I think that most traditionally bad IT shops are basically busy building faster horses and not building the car or other huge innovations. Because most of the users don't know exactly what they want. They know what problem they're having. And it's our job, because we can combine the technology knowledge and we know what's possible with that business expertise in ways that they can't. And I do want to say that their ability to learn the technology, I think it's much harder to go that direction than for everybody in this room to learn the business. And that puts us in a unique position to add value that few people can. So create an open design process, focus on the problem, iterate around a given solution in a way where everyone can digest it. No black magic. Have the business users involved from the beginning to the end of every project, but you have to work hard to make sure that they're engaged in the right way. And that requires creating the right types of documents, the right types of forums, the right types of essentially way for them to get engaged. And sometimes it's different for every organization. But if we create that openness, involve the developers, QA, everybody from the beginning to the end, you can really have that teamwork at the end where we all succeed together and can celebrate a great solution. Second, an iterative release model. So, Agile's made this very popular, and certainly the commercial product companies sometimes have a little bit of an easier time because they're dictating to users the release schedule. But internally, sometimes it's hard to have people buy into iteration, right? They say, you start a project, you design a project, you build a project, you release a project, and then you're done and you can roll everybody off, right? And it's very defined. However, we all know that if you do it that way, the minute you deliver that project, it begins to atrophy and falls into disrepair and then eventually needs to be replaced at a high cost. You need to think about your projects as products that need care and feeding over time in order to consistently keep them one step ahead of the business problem that the users are bringing to you. And then to get them over that hurdle with I just want it the right way the first time, and it doesn't matter how long it takes. Well, we all know that it's likely to be suboptimal the first time we deliver anything, just based upon the fact that iteration creates insights that help us build solutions better, right? So you need to convince them that the iteration is part of the process in order to get to where we need to go. And my technique on that is have a backup plan. Explain to them, okay, we're going to try this. In 2 months, here is the decision point. Here's where we're going to go from there, or here are the 5 paths in which we could go from there. And if you can give them a very easily quantifiable decision point in their minds, they're more apt to give you the leash in order to run and start that iteration in an effective way. And then over time, you have some successes, and then I think you can generate some true buy-in to this iterative model. The next one is a transparent cost and decision process. And this really talks about talks to the openness that I mentioned earlier. Dedicating yourselves to truly sharing all information about your decisions, about why we're doing things, about your teams, it takes a lot of confidence. And it's very uncomfortable. And the first time you have to do it, you say, damn, I just want to say, I'm the CTO, I get to make all the decisions myself, right? This is my organization. Why do I have to share it with other people, right? And that feeling is real, right? I get it. I've had it myself. But then you have to force yourself to say, I have to share it because it's going to make people understand the why. And they're going to work with me more closely and work with our teams more effectively than they have ever done before. So figure out the right way that works inside of each of your cultures. Sometimes it's meetings, sometimes it's documents, sometimes it can all be done via email. But be very efficient while you're doing it, but include more rather than less people. And if they don't consume it, then it's on them. However, create easy ways for them to get that information, and I think you'll be surprised at the results. The number of complaints from people when you don't share information, they immediately assume you're doing the wrong thing. It's just a natural, I haven't heard from them, I'm sure they're messing it up, right? And most cultures, I think it's a natural human observation, right? But if you share the information almost every time after you share it, even if they've questioned you before, they come back and say, that seems like the right decision now that I know all the details. So it's painful at the beginning to start, but once you get it going, it can be a huge amplifier of success in an organization. And lastly, a simple, honest feedback process. So as much communication internally as possible is always desired. Create a zero tolerance for politics. Create as flat an organization as is practical, given the size and the complexity of your organizations. And then take that feedback, both from your internal folks as well as your external team, and use it and make improvements to your organizations in order to be that much more effective. If you don't do that last bullet, all that talk's going to just basically fall on deaf ears, and people are going to lose trust in your organization. So you have to translate the feedback to positive change. So I know this probably sounds like motherhood and apple pie to everybody, or I hope it does. But I've been consistently amazed as I've looked across technology organizations around the different ecosystems that we play in, that this isn't the case. For whatever reason, politics, skill set, so on and so forth. But if we all commit to an open design process, an iterative release model, transparent cost decision process throughout our organizations, taking feedback and using it, I think it all adds up to what I like to call common sense driven development, and can really help us improve as an industry. So I'll try to end on a high note. As I mentioned before, the good thing is that every trend in the world today, globalization, education, mobility, big data, getting insights from data that in ways that you never have before, every single one of them is driven by technology or needs technology at the core. So what I'll say is the goal needs to be, how do I create a partnership so that when these needs and these problems arise, they come to us for our wisdom, our knowledge, and our help in order to execute the future. So there's no better way to stay relevant than do that. Thank you.